Hello there, good morning. This is Breakfast with Sally Nugent and John Kay.
And for the next half hour here on the programme, we are going to be talking to nuclear test veterans who are campaigning for recognition from the British government after suffering serious health conditions because of their service.
They took part in the nuclear bomb tests in the Pacific in the 1950s and 60s, and they did it with almost no protective equipment. First, this report from John Maguire.
The explosion of the bomb became a ball of fire 1,800 feet across, with a temperature at its center of 100 million degrees. This was the bomb that killed outright some 72,000 people.
Nuclear weapons had foreshortened the Second World War, but would now play a central role in the Cold War with the Soviet Union. Despite the obvious devastation wrought by the atomic bombs dropped in Japan, testing continued at a pace. In this case, United States servicemen are sent clear of the area, their places taken by sheep.
Animals take the place of human crews on the 73 doomed ships, helping scientists to counteract radioactivity, heat and blast. A sheep loses its coat so that one day a human life may be preserved. Special ointments are applied to determine their protective qualities, while other parts of the skin are laid bare to radioactive forces.
Test bombs were dropped throughout the following decades. Sometimes the extent of the safety equipment for service personnel were goggles or sunglasses. Often they were told to turn their backs to the blast. And almost 30 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, RAF crews were sent to South America. Their impossible-sounding mission was to fly through the gigantic clouds caused by nuclear explosions to collect dust samples for scientific analysis. Colin Duncan was a member of 543 Squadron's ground crew.
We've got no protective clothing whatsoever. The only thing you'd maybe wear is your denims if it wasn't too hot, or just your ordinary uniform. I was asked to take 3 lads out onto the aircraft and wipe the radioactive material off the aircraft. We were monitored and we've got radioactivity all over our hands and all over our hair. You had a scrubbing brush and you had to scrub your hands and your hair to try and get the radioactive dust off.
The men weren't supposed to go anywhere near the aircraft if they were highly radioactive, or hot as it was called, but often they were ordered to work on the planes regardless.
Those aircraft were hotter than the no-go zone in Chernobyl. Now, we were working on those all the time. The ground crew, with the Geiger counters, walking towards the aircraft and then suddenly stop and back off. And they backed off quite a long way. The readings were off the scale. Now, they weren't anywhere near the aircraft then. They put their aircraft down for 24 hours before we work on it. But even then, after 24 hours, you don't get a lot of decrease in that radioactivity.
Colin has had cancer and other serious health issues, which he suspects were caused by his exposure to the radioactive dust.
We just got on with the jobs, basically. You know, you didn't really think about it. If somebody said stay away from it for this sort of time, we stayed away from it. If they said, OK, you can go out and service it, we went out and serviced it. It was as easy as that. I mean, it's not the sort of job, being in the Air Force, you can turn around and say, well, I ain't going to go and do that. You know, if somebody tells you to do something, you get on and do it.
23 years ago, he won a case against the Ministry of Defence as he campaigned to receive a war pension, and believes the nuclear test veterans have been betrayed by various governments time and time again.
Now, sorry, I've lost too many friends, and I know who's responsible for it. And you know, they should stand up and have the guts to stand up and say, "Okay, we accept responsibility." It's just beyond belief
The men of Colin's squadron aren't currently eligible for the Nuclear Test Veterans Medal created in 2022, as it covers just the British and American bombs, not, as in Colin's case, French tests. It's just one of the many injustices, he says, for men whose service and sacrifice has been, at best, forgotten, and at worst, denied and ignored deliberately. John Maguire, BBC News, South Gloucestershire.
Well, we're delighted to welcome these gentlemen to our sofa this morning. Thank you all for coming in. We're going to talk to you each live in a moment about your experiences and about the impact that this has had on you. But first, let's get to know each of you a little better.
I'm Captain Terry Hughes. In 1958, I was serving in the Royal Fleet Auxiliary as a junior navigating officer aboard a ship when we were sent to Christmas Island, and there we participated in the first and largest H-bomb test ever done. In later life, I've suffered multiple skin cancers, and my son, who's suffered quite badly, he's unable to have any children. He has multiple DVTs, as well as teeth problems when he was a young boy.
My name is Malcolm Smith. I was sent to Christmas Island in 1960. I was a baker, and I returned home, and I found that my daughter and my wife had suffered with skin cancer, and we wondered if it was put down to the radiation on the island. According to the doctors, our doctors, they said, no, it's them laying in the sun here.
My name is Steve Pearce. My father, David Pearce, served with the RAF in Maralinga, South Australia. I was born with several health conditions and disabilities, including a form of short stature that is unknown to medical science. I believe this is as a direct result of my dad's exposure to radiation during his service.
My name's Robert James, and I served in the RAF, and I was sent to Maralinga in Australia in 1957 to take part in the nuclear tests. It had an effect on me in later life. My first wife had 2 miscarriages, and my daughter, she suffered a knee problem. And she was so disappointed she couldn't join the army because she failed her medical.
My name is Dennis Hayden. I went to Maralinga as a junior technician and served there from 1965 to 1966. I was a medical evacuee back to an RAF hospital in England with acute inflammation of the eyes, and 3 years later I was diagnosed with a bone complaint.
I'm Colin Duncan. In 1974, I was detached to Peru for the Royal Air Force to assist in the sampling of radioactive dust. In 2002, I found that I had developed non-Hodgkin's disease and a thyroid problem.
My name is John Morris. I served in national service on Operation Grapple on Christmas Island in 1956-58. I witnessed 4 atomic explosions. The nearest was 20 miles away. As a result of that serving over 2 years, I have lost a child. He was 4 months old. I have had pernicious anemia since I was 26, and I've had cancer, and I've got a bone marrow deficiency.
My name is Alan Owen. I am the son of James Ronald Owen, who served in Her Majesty's Royal Navy on Christmas Island in 1962 as part of Operation Dominic. He witnessed 24 detonations in 78 days. Unfortunately, he died in 1994, age 52, from a massive heart attack. My brother Gordon died 18 months later in 1996, also from a heart attack. My sister Laura was born blind in her left eye and has also had heart problems. I thought that I had escaped the curse of the nuclear testing programs, but I suffered a cardiac arrest in 2022 and was dead for 8 minutes before I was revived by a defibrillator and CPR.
The stories are simply extraordinary. And we're joined now by Dennis, Robert, Colin, Terry, John, Malcolm, Alan and Steve.
Thank you all for being here. Terry, can I start with you? Let's take us back to the late 1950s. You're a young man, you arrive on Christmas Island.
Yippee.
Is that what it felt like, yeah?
Paradise Island, yes, yeah, in the middle of the Pacific. Actually, we didn't know where Christmas Island was to start with. But when we got there, we were there for a couple of days fishing and swimming up. And then we had a surprise. They told us they were going to explode the biggest and largest H-bomb ever. Now, the interesting thing about the Royal Fleet Auxiliary is that we are all Merchant Navy civilians. So we're not military, we're civilians. And as such, our crew were very unhappy about this. And the resident naval officer came out and said, you know, everything will be right, we've done all this before. Because that was the first lie, because they hadn't done it before. You know, nobody knew anything about this. But anyway, they told us exactly what was going to happen. We were all given our places on the ship. And I was given a place near the engine room to look after crew. And they said, when the countdown happens, just hold on to something just in case anything happens. So we did. They had 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And immediately I could see this bright light coming through the skylights, which was quite amazing, really, followed by this huge bang, and it was very, very loud. It was like standing next to a 4-inch gun without earplugs. And all of a sudden, this miniature hurricane comes rushing through the ship, with warm air all the way through. And that was it. And then we were allowed to go up on deck after and see this horrific cloud, if you like, moving up in the sky.
So you had thought you were arriving, as you say, on paradise, the beaches and the sea. When you look back to that place now, what is it for you?
It's a very horrific place, actually. I feel very sorry for the islanders who were there. We were actually told they were taking the islanders off onto one of our HMS ships, but that was untrue. They left them there on the island, together with the troops as well.
Robert, you were at Maralinga, weren't you?
I was, yes.
What do you remember?
It was totally different to Christmas Island because those guys would go swimming and fishing, but we were in the middle of the desert. But I found it interesting. My job was interesting there. We didn't realise what we were subjected to at the time. But when I came back to the UK a couple of years later, I'd done the NBC Nuclear Grain Defence Instructors course, and it opened my eyes to what we were subjected to. And I would like to say at this point that we're all here. We would like to get compensation. We are not freeloaders. We served our country, and we were subjected to evil.
And you were ill at the time that you were there.
Yes,
you were ill even while you were there, weren't you?
Yes, I was. What happened was I managed to get a 72-hour pass to fly to an Australian Air Force base outside of Adelaide. And then we went into town on the train. I was myself the only firefighter, 3 other guys. And whilst in Adelaide, I suddenly felt very, very ill. And I said to the other boys, I've got to go back to the base. And I ended up in sick bay for 8 or 9 days. And a series of different doctors coming round, testing me every day, taking notes. You've got Asian flu. Wow. At the time, I thought, oh, that's strange. I'm the only one that's got it. When I came back to the UK, as I said, when I'd done the NBC instructors course, I realised I had a mild dose of radiation. But when you're young and you're fit and strong, you get over it. But it's a long-term effect, isn't it, guys? Yeah. That's what we're concerned about, and our offspring.
Yeah. And here we are in 2025. Malcolm, do you feel, as a generation, that your stories haven't really been understood and listened to until very recently?
That is it. Yeah, that is it. I went to Christmas Island in 1960. I was a baker.
Yeah.
And as Terry said, Paradise Island, near Hawaii. Well, 18 years of age, you know. But as I say, that year, there was no bombs for us that year. So we were lucky, us people. But it's still there. The radiation is still there. Bowler cats, you know.
And so many of you and your families are living with the consequences of what happened during those tests.
My heart goes out to these people that suffered all that, you know.
How frustrating has it been for you that you think that the authorities, the country, the world maybe hasn't really taken on board what you've all been through?
Well, as I say, it's been taken years. It took 60 years to get our medal, which I'm proud to wear.
Yeah.
And when I served, I was proud to serve in the army and and the Queen, the late Queen, serve her. But it's took all these years, and they're still fighting for this compensation, you know.
And Dennis, I know you're very mindful. I mean, the gentlemen here obviously have their stories to tell, but you're also very mindful
of the history
of the people who aren't here.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah.
Tell us about them.
Yeah, well, the people who aren't here, basically, that's why I want to talk today briefly about the political aspects of our case. And the fact of the matter is that since 1952, the nuclear test veterans have been victims of two-tier justice. Then, in 1993, the British and Australian governments agreed a treaty to work together and exchange information to deny any compensation to those who served at nuclear weapons test locations. This treaty was enforced on the 10th of December 1993, and at this time they created a Minister for Veterans and also a Veterans Agency, and this was replicated in Australia. The treaty actually led to kangaroo courts coming into being, and they were designed to block nuclear test veteran widows from getting widows' pensions, to block disability war pensions for the veterans, and also to actually ensure any other entitlements that we were due to were blocked, all of which was supported by contractual partners between the Ministry of Defence, the senior civil servants, the AWE, the Armed Forces Chiefs of Staff, and of course a multitude of taxpayer-funded quangos whose primary purpose in their committees was to facilitate the government's policy. And of course, this was to deny the truth. To achieve this dystopian nightmare, they have actually criminally withheld evidence of medical records and relevant records to avoid accountability. I'd like to ask your viewers, are these the actions of a democracy or the antics of a banana republic? And we veterans and families have had enough in 2025. And to use an Australian adjective, we are bloody angry because of the premature deaths of our colleagues and for the actual genetic damage passed to our children and grandchildren.
Dennis, really powerful words. Thank you so much for preparing those.
Yeah,
thank you. Steve, you are the son of a late veteran, a test veteran, and you are living, you believe, with the consequences of what he went through.
That's right.
Back then. How angry are you that you feel that this hasn't yet been sorted out by the UK government?
It's been so long that we've been fighting. Anger is, it's huge, because what we're asking for something that is quite sort of, it's not hard to understand. The state has harmed us, so we'd like help, we'd like compensation, we'd like research done. Because I mean, at the moment, you go to the doctor and you say, "I've got this condition," and my father was a nuclear test veteran. They just look at you blankly. The NHS is not geared up to deal with radiogenic illnesses. So I think it's about time that we had some research done on the descendants, because that's never been done properly before, so that we can get some answers, so we can see what our children and our grandchildren are going to be facing, because it's a 500-year fallout through the genetic lines. Yeah. This damage is going to keep repeating. My son's got a genetic condition. I've got another child on the way that I'm naturally worried about. But yeah, anger doesn't cover it. It's massive.
And we mentioned compensation, but in the first instance, what you would really like is to sit down with the Prime Minister, right?
Absolutely. He promised me, and he's promised other people sat around here, that he would meet us. Now, he should. I mean, we met him back in opposition, and he said, you know, your campaign is our campaign. I back you 100%. He even sort of talked to me privately afterwards and said, I have children. I understand. I get it. And I felt really hopeful. I thought, actually, this is a man we can work with. He understands. He does get it. But then since he's got into number 10, nothing. Zilch.
Well, it's interesting you should mention that, because yesterday I spoke to the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, and I know he has been very much involved in your campaign, and he spoke very passionately about that potential meeting with the Prime Minister and the possibility of a public inquiry.
I think it is just morally indefensible to deny people access to their medical records, to tell them the truth about what happened to them, because they've been unable to protect their sons, their daughters, even, I think, their granddaughters and grandsons from the potential impacts of that nuclear radiation. I mean, there can be no justification.
And yet, successive governments have kept their medical records secret, have kept them closed. What is their motivation for doing that, do you think?
I am certain they will say it's something to do with national security, but quite honestly, that just simply isn't good enough at all. We're talking about events that happened 5 decades ago or more in many instances.
When he was in opposition, Sir Keir Starmer said he would meet the veterans. He has not done that yet. What should he do now for these people, these survivors?
Well, I do applaud the Prime Minister for that landmark Hillsborough law that was presented to Parliament last week. That does, in my view, change things with regard to the nuclear test veterans. It empowers them. But what I would say to the government now is meet them, sit down, and the same commitments given in opposition now need to be given in government.
You've called for a public inquiry. Why?
For all the reasons that I've given. It's plain that there's been a monumental cover-up here. I think there is a very strong case that there has been a criminal cover-up, and that's why the police have been engaged, because in the absence of a public inquiry, it is essential that these issues are investigated by somebody, and we're grateful that Thames Valley Police are looking at these issues now. But the best thing to do is to give the veterans a time-limited, urgent public inquiry to get to the facts, the truth, make reparation now so that you can look them in the eye and say a wrong was done to you. That's what they've fought all of their lives for. Time is running out to be able to do that, but it's absolutely critical to me that is what is done.
So that's Andy Burnham. We did approach number 10 to put those comments to them and raise concerns about the veterans. And they've directed us to this statement from the Ministry of Defence, who've said the government is committed to working with veterans, listening to their concerns. Ministers have commissioned officials to look seriously into unresolved questions regarding medical records.
Turn to you, John. After everything you've been through, your family has been through, how important is it for you to get this sorted as soon as possible?
It's been one of these battles that we keep banging our head against the wall and we never seem to get anywhere. And just listening to the statement that's just been read out, that is the biggest load of garbage the MOD could ever come out with. I've got several issues with that. One of them is there's been approximately 150 people applied for a pension. Only 4 have been successful. There were 22,000 military personnel involved in this experiment. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, this was an experiment. We were human guinea pigs. The MOD will never, ever accept it. And yet, sadly, which is absolutely unbelievable, all other countries, including Russia, have paid compensation to the nuclear veterans because they realised that the problems that they created, first of all, they hadn't done a proper job in making sure that we were safe, I sat 20 miles from the centre of an atomic explosion with a pair of trousers and a top on and some sunglasses.
And just remind us, what do you think has been the impact on your health and your family's health because of that moment?
That moment is so vivid that I saw the Oppenheimer film and I couldn't come out of the cinema for 10 minutes until after it had finished, because I went back to the day that I had a son, 4 months old, and he died. It was put down originally that me and my wife had killed him. It was then suggested it was a cot death. It was then said, when I got the death certificate, he had pneumonia, bronchial pneumonia. It took me 50 years to get, under the Freedom of Information Act, my granddaughter, Laura, got it for me, that my son had died with lesions on the lungs and his lungs had not formed properly.
And you're convinced that that's directly connected to what...
Absolutely. Yeah. When you hear, and you'll hear the stories from all these gentlemen, our death rate, if you like, as I said, there's 22,000. I think there's about 1,200 of us left. Actuarial people have suggested at our age group it should be about 4,000. That's another story. But Keir Starmer promised he would meet us. I will definitely meet him. And I'm warning you, Keir, I will be around. And if I'm not around, my family will be around and follow you through. I have had pernicious anemia since 26. I've had cancer, and I have a bone marrow deficiency. And if anybody from the MOD would like to talk to me, I'd be more than willing to crack them on the nose and said, my God, young men, you have been economical with the truth.
We did speak to Cabinet Minister Pat McFadden a little bit earlier. We were doing a wider political interview, but we did talk to him at the end about your campaign, the fact that you want to get in touch with the Prime Minister and sit down with him. And he said you should get in touch with Downing Street in the usual way. And
today.
He said, yeah, today. And he made it sound like it would be quite straightforward.
Right. I've written 6 letters personally. I've even handed 2 letters to MPs to hand to Downing Street. And I was told that he'll hand it in, and I've no doubt he did, and he said, but he will never see it because the establishment will block it. And that is the problem. That is the problem we're facing. It isn't our elected members of Parliament that are running this country. It's the establishment. And until Keir Starmer gets a grip of the establishment, we'll carry on banging our head against the wall forever. He has the duty to look after everybody. And I believe, I spoke to him in 2021, I was convinced, and I still believe the man is an honourable man and will meet us. We want to save the taxpayer millions and millions of pounds. Does Keir Starmer actually want 90-year-old men in a court of law fighting for the right that the rest of the world has given? Keir, please, please listen to us. Every other party has ignored us. Promises ignored us. In 2019, the Labour Party manifesto said that they would pay the veterans a £50,000 fee. We, the veterans here, have never, ever asked for any money.
John, thank you so much for talking in such detail about that and about the health implications that you have been suffering from over the years. Colin, I know you have had significant health problems too.
Yes, I have. I suffer from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and the bad thyroid. I had the spleen removed and the thyroid removed. And luckily enough, I survived. I'm one of the few that did survive from this on my squadron.
But the health problems have gone on over many years, haven't they?
On my squadron, yes.
Yes.
I like to think of a 543 squadron as the forgotten squadron, because this is something they have forgotten. 543 was what they classify as a snifter squadron, and our task, we were based at RAF Whitton with the Victor bombers, HS2 bombers, and our task was to chase the bombs that were let off by other countries around the world. This included the French, the Chinese, probably North Vietnam, all over the place. There were something like 40 different sorties that we had to do throughout different countries in the world. I went on my sortie in 1974. That was Operation Vellum, and we were based in Peru. The French were letting off the bombs from Moroa, and every time they let a bomb off, we had to scramble an aircraft, get the aircraft in the air. It would fly through the centre of the radioactive cloud, pick up all the radioactive dust and so forth in the special scoops we had on the aircraft, brought it back to Lima. Those were offloaded by the AWRE chaps, all kitted out in safety equipment, masked the lot. Our chaps, when the aircraft landed, had to work on those aircraft. We had to do after flights, before flights, and so forth. The aircraft were absolutely red hot. We had nine bombs let off. 2 were basically damp squibs. The biggest one, I think, was something like 1 kiloton. And that aircraft, when it came back, was absolutely red hot. We couldn't work on it for 24 hours. 24 hours later, we go into shift, and I had to take 3 lads out to try and wipe this radioactive dust off the aircraft. This is with what they call Kim wipes, which are a type of a cloth, if you like, a dishcloth, a larger one.
A dishcloth for wiping away
radiation, radioactive material from around the undercart and so
Colin,
forth.
I'm just going to stop you there because I want to make sure that we include... Thank you so much. I'm going to make sure we talk to Alan, because you've been campaigning so hard, representing all these gentlemen on behalf of your late father and your late brother. I think a question that some of our viewers might have is that it must be difficult knowing for sure or proving for sure that anybody's illness is connected to what happened there in the Pacific. How do you explain that?
So we've now worked, when we set up Lab Rats, we worked on an evidence basis. Documents, evidence. So everything we go to the government with, we have evidence backed it. Their own documents, their own archive footage, their own information that they don't even know that they have.
And we have fought hard to get a lot of that released.
Absolutely, yes. And the Merlin database is going to be released in the near future. But for these guys, our message is that Keir Starmer is the custodian of this country at the moment. He is at the top level. He could sort this out right now. We are at the Labour Party conference next week. He could meet with us. And your question about just write the letter, it's 427 days since I wrote to him, and we've had nothing from the Cabinet Office, nothing. Every day on Twitter, there's a video that goes out that's now got 9 million views that the Cabinet Office is tagged in. Nothing. We have new educational programmes. We have a new documentary coming out, which is called Our Planet, the People, My Blood, which talks all about that's coming out in 2026. The descendants are here. If you think that you're waiting for all these guys to go because they are in their 80s, you're going to be much, much mistaken, because the descendants are coming behind. And we are well researched, we are well documented, and we will be here for a long, long time. So we need to sort this out right now.
Why do you think you're not getting an answer?
It's the establishment. It's exactly what Andy Burnham says. If you look at the other scandals, you can blame somebody else. You can blame the Post Office. You can blame, the NHS. The person to blame for this is in Whitehall, in the establishment, right in the centre of London, and they do not want to accept it. How can the American government set up a RICA programme, pay $2 billion out in compensation, and we stand there on the same island these guys were and say, nothing to see here? It's unbelievable. And
do you think that comes down to money, if you're right, that the establishment doesn't want to pay out that compensation?
Yeah, it's the historical. And they believe if they pay out to us, there'll be others that will be coming behind. They don't want this brick wall to fall. We are knocking that brick wall down piece by piece, and we will knock it down, because there's going to be a big bill. And I don't want to see these guys in court, as John said. We don't want to see them in court. We want them to admit their wrongs. An apology would go a long way for these guys.
Malcolm, when you look back on your experiences, on all of your experiences, going in as young men, hoping for adventure, career, excitement, serving your country, doing what you thought was the right thing. You sit here now with us this morning. What do you think about that young boy? How do you feel about those young men who went into this not knowing what they were doing?
I didn't know what was happening. I went out there as a baker, as I say, but I didn't know what I went out there for. As I say, there was no bombs that year, but I found out afterwards that there was still the radiation there. But I'd just done my time from January to December, and that was it, really. I didn't... but I say, I feel sorry for the other people that happened to them,
We're talking about you as young boys back then. I just wonder whether we could finish by talking about Steve's young boy, your son, who I met last night, who's smashing. He's a lovely lad. But what are your concerns for him and for others of that next generation going forward, just in terms of how problems might be even showing themselves already?
I mean, this is the reason I really get involved in the campaign, is for descendants such as my son. It initially started with concern for my nephews. Now I've had a child myself. But yeah, he's got... I actually had our genome done, both mine and my son's, at great expense.
So looking at your DNA and...
Yeah, I got it done by the Americans because I didn't want any interference from the UK. And it seems that our DNA is altered. I mean, the average male in UK, I think it's 42% chance of heart attack. I am in the 90s. My son is in the 70s. We are massively high risk of breast cancer, to the point where it's got a warning that if we have female children, we have to have that conversation with them. So there's a number of other things, but they're the really serious ones at the moment. But it's just list after list of things that are different about us. And I want to get my dad's medical records, because the MOD makes it seem very, very easy. Oh, just apply and you'll get them. That's rubbish. Been trying for 3 years. I've got a letter on MOD letterheaded paper that says, we have the document, but we are withholding it. And then they're standing up in Parliament saying, no documents are withheld. So they're lying to Parliament. And they've set this process up. I'm trying it. They keep coming back with, you need this document, you need this document, you need this document. Documents that are actually impossible to get. I can prove that my mum is the executor of my dad's will. She's entitled to it as his surviving spouse. I am entitled to dad's record because I have genetic conditions, and yet it's just roadblock after roadblock, and it's beginning to feel personal.
Do you have hope that things might be put right, perhaps for your children?
Hope, yes, because that's what keeps me going. And I think as long as Alan and I, as descendants, just keep pushing and pushing and fighting, then, yeah, eventually that wall will have to come down.
Yes, of course. Terry.
I agree with Steve about the DNA. I had my DNA done, and there are quite a few mutations which have taken place, which I understand is due to the radiation. I must say a very big thank you to Alan, because if it hadn't been for him, I think we would have been stuffed by now. I'd like to get that weak Prime Minister off his backside and apologise to us, apologise to the veterans, apologise to all the descendants for all the atrocities that have happened to us, and also to apologise for telling us we get compensation, and that's never happened at all. It's just gone completely dead, and I think that's wrong.
Gentlemen, I have a question for all of you, which is how many of you, if you could raise your hand, how many of you think you will see justice in your lifetime? How hopeful are you?
I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful, yeah, I'm me. Yeah.
But you never know how long you've got.
You don't know. You've got to be realistic in that respect.
Yes.
I'm a little bit hopeful, yes.
You've got to be.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Really? And why is
Too
that?
many demands on the exchequer.
Yeah.
And the country's in a dire situation. But I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Can I?
John.
You just heard about proof. Alan suggested we have the proof. I've delivered a document to the BBC today. I worked on the laundry, taking the point up about the ermine flying through the cloud. We washed their clothes. We washed their clothes in contaminated water. When the island was cleaned up, the laundry equipment was so badly contaminated, they had to dump it at sea. That is the MOD's own record, and yet they deny us. As I said earlier, they are so economical with the truth. What they said is not worth the paper it's written on.
Alan, having been praised as the campaigner here, if the Prime Minister is watching right now, if they're watching in Downing Street, what, very simply, is your message to the government?
We are at the Labour Party conference next week. We've heard from Pat McFadden that says it's really easy to get a meeting. I've been waiting 427 days for the meeting. You need to meet with us at the Labour Party conference. You made us a promise, John, Steve and myself, a personal promise. Keep that promise. You were elected on honesty and transparency. Be honest, be transparent and stand up and end this 73-year scandal.
Just to remind everybody of the words that we do have from the MOD, this is when we approached number 10 for a statement, they directed us to these words. Ministers have commissioned officials to look seriously into unresolved questions regarding medical records as a priority, and this is now underway. We are committed to working with veterans and listening to their concerns.
I'd like to say a point about the Merlin document that's being reviewed at the moment. That's a bit of a red herring because there's the Merlin document, but there is also another dossier and record which is unnamed, and of course this came about through a tribunal. They revealed they'd had a second document, and of course there is where all the data is. The Merlin document will be sanitised, and they've got this alternative document that they wouldn't admit they even knew the name of. And besides that, a lot of the records are being lodged in a depository in the far northern tip of Scotland, unavailable for public view, even by historians, for any number of years. We don't really know how many number of years that is.
Still so many questions, but
yes,
clearly the fight goes on for every single one of you. Thank you so much for travelling. I know you've come from all over the UK and you've faced all kinds of challenges getting here, but we really appreciate your time and your openness. Dennis, Robert, Colin, Terry, Malcolm, Steve, Alan, John, thank you all so much.
Thank
We
you,
will
Jess.
definitely...
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
OK. Thank you.
You're watching Breakfast. It's 12 minutes past 9. Let's go to Carol, who has today's weather for us. Morning, Carol.